I was a folk music impresario. There once was a coffee house in downtown Syracuse called Happy Endings. Anybody ever go to Happy Endings? Yeah, no. Oh gosh, what a great place. I was taken on as the one who would book the musicians, handle the contracts, run the concerts. The coffee house was a pretty humble affair. It was something that the owners started up as a retirement project to indulge her dessert-making hobby and indulge the joy that she got when people enjoyed her cakes and cookies and pies and the cheesecakes. My goodness, the cheesecakes. Having musicians in wasn't something she planned on. It just kind of happened. She created a space, and this thing happened. The music was more than she could take on and be responsible for, so she eventually asked me to take care of it. By that time, I had graduated from being a frequent flyer at the open mic nights to actually being a host of the open mic nights and a faithful attender of the concerts that were already taking place at the coffee house. So stepping in to book the musicians was kind of the next step in my folk music faith journey. Very soon after I started on as the booking agent there, I went to a conference of an organization called the North American Folk Alliance. At that conference, I met David Tamulevich, the man who wrote Ours is a Simple Faith, the song I just sang. David was and still is an agent representing some of the biggest names in the world of contemporary folk music. He's worked with a whole mess of people like John Gorka and Ani DeFranco and Holly Near and Peter Yarrow and Lucy Kaplansky and Cheryl Wheeler and on and on and on. I had contacted him a couple of times, hoping to book some of those names and couldn't quite make that happen. I booked some of the maybe lesser known, not quite yet well-known acts with him. And when I happened to see David walking through the conference hotel's hallways, I boldly introduced myself, and he was so incredibly gracious. I asked if he had any advice for a novice booking agent at a little coffee shop. And we sat down at a nearby table, and he talked with me for a good hour and shared stories and recommendations, and it was a gift. I was incredibly flattered by the attention. He didn't have to take that kind of time for a little coffee house dude like me. I guess I tell you all that to say that David is a very generous, compassionate, good-hearted guy. And I think that comes across in the songs that he writes, because he's also a musician. I first heard Ours is a Simple Faith when David and his musical partner, David Ho, sung it one night when they gave a concert at Happy Endings Coffee House. The music of contemporary songwriters and acoustic folk artists that I was immersing myself in at the time was feeding me in what I began to realize was a spiritual way. My friend, the Reverend Cheryl M. Walker, says that people join a congregation to make friends, do some good, and grow their souls. And that's what was happening for me with the music, around the music. By this time, I'd also been hired by the May Memorial Unitarian Universalist Society as a musician and music coordinator for their, at the time, Sunday late afternoon service that they were doing. The music part of my life and the growing UU part of my life are not separate things. They're the same journey for me. They feed each other. And I started seeing this nominally secular music as also very, very spiritual. It was part of me growing my soul and exploring what I believed. And then along comes this song, "Ours is a Simple Faith," and I think, yep, there it is. That's my faith. It felt to me like a good description of what Unitarian Universalism is. It was one of the songs that we sang as part of my ordination service back, 13, 15 years ago now? I like the song so much that I want it to be easily singable by congregations, so I came up with an arrangement of it, and when I shared that arrangement with David, he asked if he could share it with other choir directors who were frequently asking for an arrangement of his song. I wasn't the only one finding some affinity with this piece. Most of those choir directors calling him were UUs, as we might expect. His song has also found its way into various Christian worship services, but as it did so, one line of the song got changed. The song starts with a chorus, and then it launches into what's, I guess, its first verse. And the beginning of that first verse is kind of an amazing statement. It says, "There is no hell to fear." I've looked for the song online. You can look for it online on YouTube or whatever, and you'll find it in all kinds of church services, all kinds of churches posting it. And I haven't yet found it in one of those services, one of those postings, including that line. Instead of that line, they sing, "No room in this heart for fear." Okay. Well, more than anything else that the Bible says, over and over again, the Bible says, "Be not afraid." So that's kind of an appropriate thing to sing about. But then what gets left unsung is this really bold statement of universalist theology. Universalism starts with the idea of a loving God and goes on from there to reject the idea that some of us are destined for hell. A loving God wouldn't do that, says Universalism. The idea of hell isn't consistent with a loving God. A loving, all-powerful, all-knowing God would not create somebody and then say, "Oh, I created you so that you could be damned for eternity. You're welcome." That is not the God I believe in, says Universalism. In fact, says Universalism, once you commit to this universalist faith, you find yourself preaching, "There is no hell to fear because a loving God will not leave you behind." Maybe you've heard of this series of post-apocalyptic novels called Left Behind. The Universalist version of the Left Behind series of apocalyptic novels is, I think it's a blank book, because nobody got left behind. Nobody gets left behind. How often does that sentiment get sung on a Sunday morning in the United States? David told me that it's fine with him if someone doesn't want to sing that line and wants to sing instead, "There is no room in this heart for fear," but that he really does prefer the "there is no hell to fear" line. There is no judgment day drawing near where God is going to decide to give up on you. This is a statement of a radically loving faith. We won't ever give up on you. Here's another statement of faith. You yourself have a direct connection to the sacred. You don't need an intermediary. You don't need a negotiator or a translator. You don't need anyone to serve as a go-between. You have an intuition and an insight that, if you really listen, you can trust. At your core, you are in touch with the sacred. Trust that inner voice you hear every day. This is one way to understand the thing that's at the heart of what the transcendentalists like Henry David Thoreau and Ralph Waldo Emerson and Margaret Fuller were talking about. No matter what is happening around you or happening to you, nothing can divide you or segregate you from the divine. Even if you make mistakes, even if you fail at something, it's right there with you, a love never giving up on you. And we do sometimes fail at things. We make mistakes. And this can be devastating to our sense of who we are. Probably because so often we're encouraged to treat life as if it was a contest and everyone else as fellow contestants who we have to beat. But the point of life isn't to win. The point of life isn't to come in first. We shouldn't be trying to divide ourselves up into winners and losers. Life's not a goal or race. It's about heart and faith and living a life of grace every day. Grace can be a tricky concept to understand. There's a heavy theological word for you, grace. Here's how I understand it. Grace is gift giving in spite of what you or anyone else might think about what the person receiving the gift might deserve. Each person has an inherent dignity and worthiness. So the air that you're breathing right now is a gift of grace. It didn't stop to evaluate whether or not you deserved it or not. The air is just giving itself to you. It's a gift of grace. There's probably a Code Blue shelter in this town, right? On the cold nights, there's somebody, sort of, okay. It's supposed to be a place for people to go. Because we don't leave anybody behind. Because we're not about judging, oh, I don't know if you deserve warmth or shelter. You have to pass a few tests for me first. No. You're human, you're out in the cold, you deserve shelter. Here's shelter for you. What a gift. What an amazing gift that is. Grace is amazing. And it's something that we can live by and with. Maybe wonder for just a moment, what grace might you be able to offer to someone today or this week? What's a gift of grace that you could give? Ours is a simple faith. Nobody gets left behind. We give up on nobody. We are about hands held out and open to help and to hold. Trust is an open hand. Think about this gesture. Might want to even do it. Go ahead and reach out in front of you with an open hand. That's a different kind of thing than, this is a different kind of gesture. And I think it's a way to understand what faith is, because you're there ready to receive. So you're having faith in that there is something that you can receive. There is a connection that you can make. I have faith that there is this connection that we can achieve. Here it is. Here's this opportunity. Trust is an open hand. I have a simple faith. there are so many ideas and worries and concerns in our lives. It'd be nice if we could be confident that there's such a thing as a simple faith, that there's some sort of still point that we could connect with when everything else seems just out of our control or too scary or just too, I don't understand what's going on. So try this as a still point. Be rooted in the land. There's a story about the Buddha, and when he gets challenged by demons, and they ask him, what witness do you possibly have? Look, I've got all these soldiers behind me. What do you have? And what the Buddha does is reaches down to the earth, touches the earth. Be rooted in the land. The poet Atena O. Danner writes, I believe in my breath and heartbeat, in the woven, grasping roots of trees. I may not see or hear how things move underneath, still I believe. Be rooted in the land. Still I have faith, I say. Ours is a simple faith, and I'll admit that when I hear that phrase, ours is a simple faith, there's a little voice in my head that calls out, how simple is it? Where does that voice come from? That gesture of reaching out with an open hand, is that simple? I mean, it's simple, right? I just did it. It's like that's not difficult. But there's a lot to that, isn't there? I mean, it's simple and there's a lot to it. Living a life of grace, it's simple and it feels complicated and difficult. And often there are forces in our society or in our professions that say, if you're simple, that means you are unsophisticated. You got to get more complex. If you want to be impressive, show off your capacity for complexity. I ran across a letter once. So writing to his friend, the Lady Georgina Pollock, the U.S. Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes shared with her how much he liked some pretty heady, complex literature. Caught up in his enthusiasm for this literature, in his letter he exclaims, how odious a virtue the much praised simplicity. The only simplicity for which I would give a straw is that which is on the other side of the complex, not the simplicity which has never divined it. And I think Holmes kind of hears himself here, how much he's kind of leaning into a bit of hubris or pompous pridefulness here a little bit, because immediately following that in his letter, he says, with which remark, I shut up. Only adding that I am simply and affectionately yours, O.W. Holmes. Simplicity is tricky and perhaps requires a bit of humility and an awareness of irony. When I sing the song, Ours is a Simple Faith, it's not a very complicated song, and yet it is so full. There are so many things in it. Heaven is in this place every day. Wow. What a bold statement that is. Hope is the ground we till. to commit ourselves to the tilling of hope. Simple and yet not a simplistic simplicity. I think the reason I respond to the song so much is because of a faith like that described by Otena O. Danner in her poem. She writes, "Because I believe in the power of words, of intention expressed, of gratitude and creation, the unfurling of purposeful language might be a prayer or an incantation. Every time I seek out more than is already there, a prayer, a prayer. I believe in the power of words, perhaps especially in the power of words sung. And that song, ours is simple faith, that prayer, makes me want to be a braver you. May we know heaven in this place every day. May we till the ground of hope with faith in our power to shape the day. May we not live to win or race. May we live with heart. May we live lives of grace every day. May we live with open-handed trust. May we live open to mystery and to wonder. May we live lives seeking harmony with one another and with our world. May we have faith that there is a love that gives up on no one, not even us, not even you, not nobody. May we be not afraid to proclaim our simple faith every day. May that be so. I invite you all to rise.